Marketer of the Day, episode 629, Consulting Success. Scale up, find freedom from hourly fees, fill the pipeline, and solve problems with Michael Zipursky.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. We're chatting with Michael Zipursky, and Michael is an author, he's an entrepreneur, and most importantly, he's the CEO of ConsultingSuccess.com, and that's a seven-figure consulting business, and Michael can run that plus travel the world with his family, and he's consulted for organizations and advised leaders in over 30 industries, all the way from service providers to billion-dollar multinational corporations, and Michael has helped over 300 consultants at 6 and 7 figures to their annual revenues. So you're going to want to sit up, take notes, and pay plenty of close attention so that you can get similar results, if not more. So, Michael, how's it going today?
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Robert.
Awesome. Glad to have you here. So I hear that you help consultants. So can you kind of help us all get on the same page? If someone's listening and they're like, well, I'm not sure if I'm a consultant or I could be a consultant, what does a consultant mean to you, and how do we know if we are one?
Yeah, I mean, the most simplest level, a consultant is someone who serves, provides value and advice to help people either solve a problem that they're having or helps them to reach a goal that they're going after. So, if you're dealing, it could be whether it's like in the nonprofit world, it can be working with billion-dollar organizations, or it can be working with a small group of entrepreneurs, or even an individual person who has a challenge or is looking to achieve something. And if you're able to add value and to help them to go from A to B, in terms of B being their destination, then you could call yourself a consultant. I mean, the one distinction that I'll make is in our world, around consulting success, what we do is we work with consultants who have expertise. So they're not just, straight out of school. They're people who typically have been consulting for some time, or they've been in the corporate world for some time. So they have a real area of expertise. And now what they want to go out is, create their own business and really achieve the level of freedom that they're after and income that they're after, and make a real impact in the world without, kind of having a boss breathing down their neck, or someone else telling them what to do all the time.
And that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of us have gone on a similar journey where we did the schooling, we got the experience, we developed those skills, we tried things out, we figured out what we were good at. And then we ended up in a place where we were maybe working our tails off for someone else and doing a lot of thinking and working, but then someone else gets a percentage of our paycheck. So maybe some of these people say, I've gone through all the hard work. Now it's time for me to get a little piece of the pie. And what I really like about how you explained that was you mentioned things like serving, delivering value, solving a problem, delivering a goal. And I can relate to when I was a teenager and I was first experimenting with internet marketing and creating apps and plugins and programming and web pages and things like that. And I was just puttering around. I literally was experimenting, and that's it. I'd play around with different projects, and it was no surprise that the money wasn't coming in. But then when I turned my attention to what are the problems out there, where are people stuck, and whether that is like seeing a need and then creating a solution for that, or doing some kind of like freelancing, contracting sort of thing, that's when things changed. And I didn't realize it when I was just a teenager and I thought I knew everything. I thought, I can get on the computer, get on the internet, push some buttons, and then somehow the money will flow in. But you're so right that when we look at what problems are to be solved and getting people from point A to point B there, then it not only makes things simpler, but it gets us to where we need to go.
Yeah, the big thing is always to focus on value, right? I mean, too many early stage consultants are just following the status quo, what they see others doing in the marketplace, which is typically looking at hourly fees or a daily rate. They're trading time for dollars. They're measuring success based on time, and they're not focused on the value. But the real realization, I think, for people is that clients actually don't care about time. I mean, of course, you have to deliver within a timeline that is acceptable to them, but beyond that, whether you get the result for them in 3 weeks or 6 weeks, as long as that's still within the acceptable timeline, they don't really care about how much time you spend doing the work. What they care about is, are they getting the result that they want? And so the opportunity for consultants is to really go deeper and have a more meaningful, what we call a consulting sales conversation before you even begin the project, so that you really have an opportunity to speak with that buyer, to really understand, to get to the core of what is meaningful and valuable for them, which then allows you to communicate and to identify and to really like put the spotlight on the value of that solution. And when the buyer sees that, not only are they willing to invest at higher level fees because they now look at it not as a cost, but actually as an investment, but they're also more excited to get started because they see the benefit that can come from it. It's not just about deliverables and inputs or things that the consultant is going to do for them. It's really about the transformation. It's about the outcome and the benefit and the value that comes from that process.
I like that mindset a lot because it seems like it's easy to get stuck in some of these bad mindsets you're mentioning and getting stuck in thinking, well, I have to put in all these hours, or I have to show my client that I'm working for days on end so that way they'll appreciate it, or I need to pile in all these terms and all these features. And so it seems like what you're saying is that client might not care about any of that. And that what's more important is to have that conversation, to listen, to ask questions, to figure out the meaning, to figure out where their priorities are. That way we can get there and not just do a lot of hustle and hard work for the sake of it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, one of the big mistakes that people make is that, or the reason why people lose business oftentimes is because they're focused more on what they are doing, right? Which is connected to how much time it takes them. But it's not about you, and it's not about what you do. It's about the result. It's about the outcome that the client gets and whether or not that really resonates and aligns and connects with that desire that they have, or solves the problem that they're experiencing. And if it does, and if you get very focused on that, then you have the opportunity to win more business, because really what you're able to do, I mean, the skilled consultant is not actually having to be that creative. What they're doing is they're very good at asking questions. So they're eliciting, they're listening, they're pulling in what and almost summarizing what the client or prospective client is telling them that they want. And then what the consultant is really able to do is to transition to say, well, here's what you told me that you're dealing with. Here's what I understand that you want. Here's what the next step would be. So you're essentially offering what the buyer has just told you that they want, right? So you're selling them, if you want to call it that, you're selling them what they just told you that they want to buy. And so the whole sales process becomes a lot easier, rather than trying to ram down, here's my methodology and here's our approach and here's how long it takes us and we're going to give you this report and that and all these other things. Like, some of that stuff is nice to have, and buyers still want to know what they're going to get, but what they care more about is what the actual outcome and result will be. So that's number one. Number two is that when you do this, you're able to make a lot more money, because you're not now looking at the number of hours that it's going to take you. And hours is a ceiling. You only have so many hours in a day. And so unless the model that you're taking is one to build a consulting firm where you have a lot of staff and associates and other consultants, and you're making a margin on their hourly fee, which is certainly one path. And we have some clients that have done that very successfully, building multiple seven-figure businesses with that approach. But for most independent or small consulting firms, what they want is to create a lot more value. They don't want to have all the overhead. They don't want to have a big need for infrastructure and resources and team management and all of that. They're tired of that kind of from their corporate days. And so what they want is to be able to generate a really great living, either by themselves or with a small team, and have a lot of freedom while they do that. Well, you can't do that if you're stuck on hourly fees, because at some point you're either going to cap out on the number of hours that you can work, or you're going to cap out on the amount that you can charge per hour, because a lot of companies aren't comfortable with the idea of paying someone $750 an hour or $1,500 an hour. Like, it just doesn't fly in a lot of situations. So what do you do when you want to earn more than that? Well, if you want to earn more than that, then you have to start connecting what you're doing to the value and the outcome and the result that the client is going to see, because now they start to see it, if you're positioning it properly, as a return on investment, not as a cost.
You're making a lot of sense here. So what I'm hearing here is that it gets like, there's a limit on how much time you have in the day and how much time you're willing to spend, and how much time you have left and all that. And it's difficult to, at a certain point, justify someone paying you $100 an hour, $500 an hour, $750 an hour. But if you can deliver some kind of result, some kind of value, and if you can add $100,000 to someone's bottom line, then your $20,000 fee is cheap in comparison. And something else that you touched on that you're reminding me, it took me years to get over this, is that whole idea of listening to people and finding that middle ground, finding the understanding, and then in a way repeating back to them what they want, maybe in even a more concise way or even in a more better way. And that was a painful lesson to learn. I don't know if you went through a similar transformation, but I used to think, well, I need to show people how smart I am, right? I used to think I was so smart, and I used to think I had to dazzle them with my brilliance, and then that would change things around for them. And it turns out that if someone does something that we like, or we can relate to, or that is similar to us, or that we already connect with, then we'll think that person is smart. And if someone is all over the place and crazy and scatterbrained and not making sense to us, then we'll think that person is dumb, whether they are or not. So that was really, really powerful for me, and an important lesson there to kind of go for that connection, go for the relationship, instead of just trying to be some crazy mad scientist. So along these lines of getting out of the hourly fees, getting to freedom, do you have any interesting stories to share with us of either yourself or one of your clients who said, I'm stuck on this hamster wheel, I need to pursue this better path? Any stories like that come to mind?
Oh, I mean, there's many, and we've personally worked with over 300 consultants, helping them to add 6 and 7 figures to their annual revenue. So, not every single one of them, but certainly many of them start off with hourly fees and daily rates because that's what the market is used to. That's what people default to. It's easy, right? It doesn't require any creativity or any real skill to say my fee is $150 an hour, or it's $200 an hour. Like, that's easy to do, but that's not where true wealth and growth happens. So I can give you the example of one client who was looking at a second kind of follow-on project from an existing client, and she was going to go in based on the conversation that she had with her contact for that second project at $60,000 for that project. Well, before doing that, we had a conversation and we really broke down what she was doing, what the transformation would be for her client, what was involved. Of course, we took time as a consideration because you want to make sure that all projects are still profitable and you don't want to be spending more time than you need to on them and kind of undercharging. But we looked at all the different factors. And what became very clear is that there was a significant amount of value that would be delivered for that client. And so she ended up adjusting her proposal and went in and won that business for somewhere between $240,000 and $300,000. Now, the most important part of this is that she didn't have to spend any more time delivering on that. So essentially, she gave herself, a really nice pay increase on that project without having to do more work. And so these types of stories happen very often. We had another client who was charging an hourly rate, then moved to a daily rate. Actually, one specifically that I'm thinking of right now, who's based in France, he already had a pretty high daily rate. And this is, daily rates are something that quite a few, even seasoned consultants use. The background of this consultant was that he was actually the president of a fairly large, multi-million-dollar organization. Now he was off doing consulting and coaching, and he was doing quite well. But when he started to apply the focus more on value and ROI, what he was able to do was to take even his existing daily rate, but he was able to increase it by about 60%. And without doing any more work. So I think this is like the biggest opportunity for a lot of people. It's not that you have to work more or work harder to make more money. You simply need to make sure that you are connecting the work that you're doing to the value that you're creating and to the ROI that the client is going to receive. And if you do that properly, you can see significant growth. For ourselves in our own business, I remember many years back making that shift from when we were running one coaching program with a certain structure to all of a sudden repackaging it and kind of repositioning it and placing more value on it. And the program itself was becoming more valuable, but we actually structured it in a way where it was more leveraged for us. It required less of our time, but our clients were getting better results. And we went from, when we just kind of put this out into the marketplace, we generated something like $40,000 in new client business in about 2 weeks, just because we had figured out how to package that and how to kind of really position value and communicate that value to the marketplace.
So you're talking a lot about how to like restructure things, how to repackage things, how to change up that proposal so it's not going for that hourly or that daily rate and is then focused on the results. And so how do we get there? Is that a matter of speaking to some of these prospects or these clients and figuring out their needs, or looking at competitors? Like, how do we go from saying I'm X dollars per hour to I'm this other figure for all these bullet points?
Yeah, so understanding what your competition is doing can be valuable, but it's rarely critical, and I would say in most cases not that important. What's much more important is the conversation that you have with your ideal clients, and the focus of that conversation should be on asking really great questions. That is the sign of a skilled, successful consultant in almost all cases, that they just ask really good questions. Far too many consultants, and this is where people miss the mark, is that they rush through that opportunity. They're trying, they're at the surface level. They'll ask one question like, hey, what's your goal with this project? And then the client will tell them something, say, oh, okay, great. And like, when do you want this to be completed? Okay, great. And they'll just keep moving. They're staying at the surface level. But instead, if you ask the question, say, well, so based on what you just shared with me, or I've seen that in the industry, there's many people right now who are working on these types of initiatives. Is that the reason why you want to do this, or do you have another reason behind it? And they tell you and say, okay, well, tell me more about why is that so important to you to do right now? And when this project, or when you're able to achieve what you just shared with me, how will that impact the business? How will that impact your sales? How will that impact X, Y, Z, whatever it might be? And then you go deeper into that, right? Like, so if you don't do this right now, what does that then look like? What concerns do you have? How does that affect your competition, the market share, all these different factors, right? So I'm just giving you a few quick questions here, but this is the type of application that you want to have. These are the types of questions that when you ask, not only are you going to learn a lot more about how you can help this person and why it's so important to them, but by them having to answer these questions, there's a few things happening. Number one, they're going to, in some ways, sell themselves, right? They're going to convince themselves why this is so important when they hear themselves answering these questions. Number two, they're going to really see you as an authority and expert, because most people don't ask this level of questions. Most people don't engage in this deep and kind of meaningful conversation. So by you doing that, you're going to set yourself apart from everyone else. The buyer's going to go like, wow, this person, Robert really cares about my business. Wow, Robert really asked some great questions. Wow, like Robert got me to think about things and see some things that I hadn't thought of before. No one even got close to asking me questions like that. So now you're raising up your level of authority and expertise and kind of positioning in the mind of that ideal client. And then finally, because you've done a great job of having that conversation, you're going to learn a lot more that's going to allow you to take the value component from it and now embed that into your proposal and come back to the buyer with a proposal, an outline that is really based on the value that the buyer themselves has told you that they agree to. And so now that process of moving the business forward, getting that deal done sooner in a way that works for both parties, but certainly provides you with a lot higher compensation than otherwise, I mean, that's the typical result that occurs from this.
That's some really powerful stuff. And I like those questions especially. And everyone listening, make sure that you back up a couple of minutes here and re-listen to some of those questions, because those hit me pretty hard. I like those a lot. You asking things like, what is the reason for you doing this? Why is it important for you to do this right now? Once you're able to do that, how will that impact your company? And if you don't do this, what will happen? And I mean, you're so right that it's important for us to slow down and not necessarily rush through the process and not necessarily focus on the steps and the terms and the technical details, and maybe ask some of those probing questions and dig deep and find what the real purpose is. And maybe someone says, I need to hire you to help with this and this in my marketing and my websites, and you might dig deep and realize that there's something even more important there, or there are some of those blind spots there. And yeah, like you said, you're now setting yourself apart because you're actually thinking, right? You're actually consulting for someone, not just working. So I find that really powerful. And so we're down to the last 5-10 minutes or so here. And one thing that I'm always curious about is the mindset aspect of things, right? The self motivation and all that kind of stuff. And so, would you say, is there any kind of mental block or any kind of obstacle that holds people back from getting this kind of consulting success that they're looking for? Is it a matter of not having the work ethic, or not being organized, or being worried that they're not good enough? Is there anything that you see in these clients that you work with of any just kind of mental blocks?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. So the work ethic would not be the issue. I think most people aren't afraid to work hard. I think the biggest, what my observation here is, that the biggest issue that holds people back, in fact, is not the tactic, it's not the strategy. It's not that people don't know what they need to do. Most people like instinctively know what they need to do, and they've read plenty of books, and like the ideas are there. But what's really holding them back is their mindset, right? It's the fear of failure. It's the fear of rejection. It's the desire of comfort and safety to try and have everything just perfect, because they, again, don't want to make a mistake. And so the more that you can spend trying to get things perfect, right, the more, or the less chance you have of making a mistake, is kind of the theory or the belief that people have. But that's actually the exact opposite approach that I would suggest. What I've observed to be the best way to approach all this is to certainly have a direction, have an understanding of, what you want to do and where you want to go. But then beyond that, what's a lot more important is that you start taking action towards that. Because the more that you start, or the sooner that you start taking action, the sooner that you're going to actually learn what's working and what isn't working, right? You're going to get feedback from the marketplace. You can spend all day long, or all month long, or all year long, developing a plan in your own home office or wherever it is that you work. But none of that matters. Like, you can have the best plan in the world. You can have the nicest website in the world. You can have the nicest, whatever it is. But if the marketplace doesn't like that, if it doesn't resonate with them, if it's not what they actually want, then you've wasted a lot of time. And so the best step that people can take here is to know where they're going. Obviously you want to have the right plan in place, but then go out and take action on it and get feedback. The more conversations you have, the more that you're going to learn. And even if what you learn is that you're off track and maybe you're way off, you're going to be able to then course correct. You're going to be able to adjust sooner and more efficiently and effectively than if you spend way too much time just theorizing and planning yourself, holding off actually getting out there.
I like that mindset a lot, because it's easy and it's comfortable and it's safe to sit with your office door closed and not talk to anyone and plan and scheme for a year, and you'll feel good, but you won't get anywhere. Versus if you go out there and take action and get those prospects and have those conversations and send those proposals, then you might realize within a few weeks that you're a little bit off track, and you can adjust and you can course correct. And that seems like a better way of going about things, right? Of finding out those mistakes early and finding out where you're wrong and changing, versus being wrong but being ignorant and not changing and having no idea. And I mean, people make mistakes all the time. I mean, I just read the other day that over in the Grand Canyon, someone left a box or a barrel of some nuclear material for the past 20 years, and everyone walking by this building in the Grand Canyon got a dose of radiation. So people make mistakes, right? I mean, I live in the state of California, and for a long time people thought it was an island, just because people make mistakes. So if all those people can make mistakes, then the rest of us can. So I like that a lot. And so as we're wrapping up, winding things down here, is there anything that you think that we didn't cover, or anything that you feel like all consultants and would-be consultants need to know right now today?
And there's certainly a lot, right? And this is not something that can be like, that question when you're saying, is there anything, right away, my thought is like, yeah, I mean, do you have like a month for us to just talk nonstop? Because, I've been in this business 19 years in terms of building consulting businesses. I've been working with consultants for the last 10. There's a lot of stuff to cover, right? But what's most important is that people get really clear on who their ideal client is, that they start to then develop messaging that will resonate and get the attention, interest of those ideal clients, that they go out and have conversations with those ideal clients as much as they possibly can to truly learn what is it that person is dealing with, what is their problem, what do they want to buy, like what do they care most about, and then develop or refine your offerings so that you're able to provide exactly what that person wants to buy. And that's how you get things going. That's how you get things started. Now, once you have that, then of course, the next whole conversation is around, well, how do you start to scale that up? Like I just actually had a conversation with a client yesterday who's, working on their first $1 million deal. And their business has grown rapidly since we've started to do some work here together. And they've been doing a great job of executing and making these exact shifts around their pricing and their approach. But now their challenge has changed. It's gone from like, how do I get enough pipeline and business opportunities, and how do I transition my fees, to now like, how do I actually start to scale? How do I build this? Like I need to start bringing in a team. How do I do this in a way that creates leverage and not get myself feeling all overwhelmed and make all the mistakes that I possibly could. So just it depends on what stage people are at. They're going to have different challenges. That's one of the big things that people think is like, yeah, it's so hard right now at the early stages. There's so many challenges. Well, yeah, there's challenges at that stage, but there's also challenges in the mid stage and the latter stage. Like there's always challenges. It doesn't matter what stage you're at or how successful you are. You're still going to have challenges. You're just going to have different challenges. And so when you understand that you're not playing this game, or my suggestion would be, don't think about like you're playing this game for the short term. You should be in this with a long-term mindset, and that gives you more space and more time to enjoy the process. Like life is too short. You don't need to have your head down on the keyboard, like banging it against there every single day, going like, this is not working, and I'm so concerned about things not coming together. Give yourself a little bit more space to understand that these things are not mistakes that you make. They're lessons to be learned. They're opportunities to improve. And so as long as you're doing the right things, you're getting the right guidance, you're committing to yourself, you're investing in yourself, you're working, you're taking action consistently. Yes, you're going to make quote unquote mistakes. You're going to have lots of learning opportunities, but you're also going to improve. You're going to get better. You're going to become more proficient, and you're going to become more successful at the same time.
That's powerful stuff. And what you're reminding me is that what's it called? The Dunning-Kruger graph, where when you start off with something, you think that you know a lot, and then the more you go into it, your level of confidence and belief in yourself dips and then levels off, and then rises a little bit, and then doesn't quite get back up to that level of overconfidence that you began at. And there are a lot of people out there who haven't even started, and they feel like they have a lot of skill and they feel like they know a lot, but it's just because they haven't even started. So a lot of us who are in those middle phases, who are going through the mistakes, we don't believe in ourselves in the moment, but that's just because we're riding that curve. We're taking that downward slope to figure out all the ways not to do it, and then we're going to ride that back up and get to where the money is, get to where the fun is, and we're being entrepreneurs and enjoying the challenges and embracing them for what they are. And what I'm also hearing from you mentioning some of these things, like figuring out your ideal client, your messaging, your scaling, getting the pipeline full, is that it really sucks to try to solve problems on your own, that it helps to get that outside support, that outside help, to have someone to mentor and guide you who's taken that path from you before. And along those lines, can you tell us about the ways that you can help people listening on this call today? Do you have any websites, programs, resources that you want to direct us to? So that way, if our curiosity is there about taking this action, about going on this plan, where should we go? What should we do to take things to the next level as far as our consulting goes?
Yeah, I mean, the best place to go for all that, just kind of see what we're doing, what we're up to, is consultingsuccess.com. If people want to get a free 51-page guide that kind of goes a lot deeper into my consulting journey and some of the best practices and strategies that we've kind of proven out to work both in our businesses over the years as well as with many others, then you can go to consultingsuccess.com/blueprint and get that blueprint for free, along with a whole bunch of other kind of resources and guidance that comes with that. And then for people who are looking to go a little bit deeper, whether you're at the early stage of just launching your consulting business, we have a program called Momentum that is geared specifically to the early stage or kind of new consultant. And then for those who have been in consulting for some time or who are just really serious about getting some personal support and guidance, we have the coaching program for consultants called Clarity Coaching. And so we work with a small, selective, kind of handpicked group of consultants at any given time really helping them to build their businesses. And so that's where I spend a lot of my time, is kind of working with our clients very closely to help them to achieve some pretty rapid success.
Fantastic. And I can tell based on your answers and your language and your enthusiasm that you really do enjoy this sort of stuff. This sort of stuff is fun for you to dive into someone's business and help them out and get them to where they need to go. So if you're on this podcast and you made it this far and you're listening and you said, all this stuff makes sense and I've gotten a lot of ahas here, but at the same time, now I know that I'll get stuck if I try to continue on this path myself, well, then the easy answer for you is to go right now to consultingsuccess.com/blueprint to get that 51-page guide, because a lot of people out there are going to be listening to podcast episodes or doing the research, and they'll listen and they'll nod and they'll say, all right, consulting success, that's nice, I'll move on to the next thing. And then what good does that do you to get your brain crammed full of ideas, facts, and figures without an action plan, without hearing about those best practices, without getting the help that you need? So the place to go is consultingsuccess.com/blueprint to claim that 51-page guide. And then, like Michael said, the programs that he offers are the Momentum program if you're an early or new consultant, and then Clarity if you're really looking to build that business up to what it can and should be. So consultingsuccess.com is the place to go, and then consultingsuccess.com as blueprint is the place to claim that 51-page guide. So we'll see you there at consultingsuccess.com. And thanks, Michael, for dropping by and for sharing all these great knowledge bombs about what we need to know about our consulting business. So thank you.
Hey, Robert, thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to today's program. Start from the beginning or view past episodes at marketeroftheday.com/episodes.